Welcome to the Be Yourself, Be Heard podcast. My name is Dr. Faisal Shaikh. I'm a consultant psychiatrist. In this podcast, I'll be talking to professionals and exploring their views on neurodiversity. On the show today, I'd like to welcome Dr. Guy Clayton. He's a senior GP in the East Riding of Yorkshire region, also an occupational health expert and involved in local politics. Welcome on the show, Dr. Clayton.
Thank you very much for asking me. Thank you, Faisal.
I'd like to start by asking about who's Dr. Guy Clayton? What's the origin of Dr. Guy Clayton? Tell us a bit about your upbringing and your story that people may not have heard about.
I was born in near Wigan, which is in the north of England. And at quite a young age, my family, unfortunately, my parents split up. So I ended up moving and living with my grandparents, with my mother coming across as well, in Stockport, which is just on the south end of Manchester. And one of my first memories is living in a 2-up, 2-down house in that region, where the staircase was so tight that it was very difficult to get up and down without falling. And my grandmother, who was very deaf and had some memory difficulties, lived on the ground floor. And then we moved into a place called Welly Bridge, which is also in that region. Lived in a house with a leaking roof. I remember putting buckets at the end of the bed to catch the water so the sheets didn't get wet. And then moved on. I ended up getting a place at a school locally at Manchester. I went to Manchester Grammar School, where I was given a bursary to go there by the school itself. Moved into medicine, and then went to Scotland, St Andrews, came back to the region, and then married. So
your upbringing was mostly in the Lancashire region?
Yes, that's right. I see myself as a Lancashire lad still. I remember the shock when I went to Scotland for the first time, and everybody seemed to know instantly where I was from. And of course, I thought I spoke the Queen's English. Okay. And so to be identified by my regional accent was really quite a shock for me.
Yeah, that's interesting you say this. So how was your experience going to Scotland? How did you find that?
I loved it. I mean, I have to say, when I was picking the university to go to do medicine, I used to look at the feedback forms from the students who went to universities. And St Andrews was the university I went to. It was a split course between 3 years in Manchester and then 3 years in St Andrews and then 3 years back in Manchester. And St Andrews is on the east side of Scotland.
Scotland, yes.
About 50 miles sort of northeast of Edinburgh. And I have to say, I didn't know where St Andrews was when I actually got the place given to me. I had a vague idea that it was somewhere north of Manchester, but I couldn't have put a pin in a map and told you where it was. Yeah. But the feedback was very positive and the students had been there. Yeah. And I thought, that's a place I think I'll fit in.
Sure. And that was your draw to go there?
My draw was the fact that people who were there seemed happy.
That's interesting. Dr. Clayton, can you tell us a bit about the values that have shaped you as a person, as a clinician, as an experienced GP?
I suppose the core values that which you sort of you realise that as life moves forward, the things that you realise are perhaps things which are shaping you. I think from my point of view, the core values which motivate me are fairness, kindness, and I think politeness as well, simple courtesy. I think that these are values which sometimes seem to be missing a little bit these days. And certainly I can feel myself reacting negatively if I do find the opposite, if I find unkindness or rudeness or harshness against people. I think also acceptance. I think acceptance is very important too.
And you feel these values have shaped the way you practice medicine and you've practiced medicine?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I think you gain more confidence as you get older and you work longer in a profession. I think you get more confident that your values perhaps are important and that they steer you.
Yeah,
they're your emotional compass and your ethical compass, if you like.
And whilst we're talking about values, I'd like to bring the discussion about neurodivergence and. I'd like to know if you've had any experience of neurodivergence, either through professional work or personal experience. And
the answer is yes to that. Although, interestingly, when I was a medical student, I mean, neurodiversity was not on the curriculum at all. Really, it wasn't until quite a long way into my medical career that neurodivergence and neurodiversity really became a clinical issue of interest, really. And often with life, you discover that you live it forwards and you actually understand it backwards. And I think that my own experience of neurodiversity has been both personal and professional, so a bit of a mix of both, really.
So I'm intrigued now. You said personal and professional. Can you tell us a bit more about the personal and the professional, if you may, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I mean, interestingly, my career's evolved with time. So I started out as in anaesthetics of all things, where really the conversations with patients were very brief. Usually involved about 15 seconds after giving an injection of propofol.
Okay.
And the patient was sound asleep. So there wasn't an awful lot of patient communication there. But as my career's moved on into general practice and more recently into forensic medicine and into forensic mental health, where a large part of my work there has been with people who are neurodiverse. They've often been in the prison setting and moved into a hospital setting because they've had associated learning difficulties or mental health issues. And neurodiversity is very prevalent, I've found, amongst the patients and people who are incarcerated. And I think there's also a lot of misunderstanding about neurodiversity. My daughter shocked me a couple of years ago by telling me that she said, "Dad, two things to tell you. First of all, I've been told that I'm very likely to be ADHD." I said, "Oh, well, it doesn't come as a great surprise, darling." I mean, since childhood, she's been very active and full of ideas and very difficult to get to sleep. But the second bit did surprise me. And that's when she said, "And one of the questions I was asked, Dad, was which parent did you inherit that from?" And I looked at her and she said, "Well, of course it was you." And I was a little shocked by that because I didn't consider myself to be neurodiverse. I wasn't sure if I was a little offended by that or shocked or surprised or whatever else. And I went a bit quiet and reflected over it for a while. And then I came back to her and thought, well, actually, that makes a lot of sense. And perhaps if I've got aspects and features of ADHD myself, that would explain quite a few things over my professional, personal life, challenges I've had, potentially communication issues, maybe the direction my career's gone in, which has not been in a straight line since I've started. And so I suppose personally, in terms of family members and friends also, but professionally, in terms of more contact with people who are likely to be neurodiverse in my professional career as well.
So it's interesting hearing to this, Dr. Clayton. So your views have evolved with the times, if you like.
Absolutely.
From when you were in medical school to how there's been more recognition of this. And I think there's more recognition of this in the last decade or so in adults as well. And,
Absolutely.
And I think it's very powerful what you mentioned about your daughter. What's her name?
The name's Kay.
Kay, yeah. So Kay's, should we say, revelation to you that she may be having ADHD? And
I mean, I suppose the irony was, it didn't surprise me when she told me.
Yeah.
It only surprised me when she said, "You may have it too, Dad."
Sure.
And of course, then the penny dropped, and I thought, well, of course, that makes sense. And I think for my daughter, for her, the power of it was the understanding.
Yeah.
The being allowed to be told that actually you're not crackers. There's nothing wrong with you. You're different in some ways.
Absolutely.
But that's not necessarily a negative thing.
No.
And perhaps also it would explain why she's been so incredibly effective and good in some areas where other people perhaps have struggled.
So it was her getting that understanding, but it also allowed you to gain a bit more insight in yourself, even though initially you were shocked to hear what she was saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned difference, Dr. Clayton. I'd like to ask a little bit more about your views on embracing difference, because we do live in a heterogeneous world with lots of different identities, different viewpoints, and neurodivergence is one such thing that does experience quite a bit of otherness and difference.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I think that neurodiversity has been incorrectly seen as some sort of disability, and I think some people seem to not believe it exists at all. Some people are very negative about it. Some people feel it's a label which is unnecessary. Some feel it's overdiagnosed as well. I have to say, I think that neurodiversity is a way of understanding how different people behave. And I think that people who are neurodiverse often are very creative, have lots of interesting ideas, and don't always recognise their own, I'm going to call them superpowers, things which they're particularly good at, and perhaps also don't recognise the areas where perhaps they struggle, particularly if it's communication or in being understood. And I think that feeling accepted is a big part of this, whether it's that you yourself feel accepted or you accept your colleagues or patients or family members better, and perhaps just have a better understanding as to maybe how they think, and how they cope with life generally.
Absolutely. I think I couldn't agree more with you on that. And do you feel the process of helping someone get assessed objectively and get the right clinical diagnosis is enabling that
Absolutely
inclusion, if you like?
I think because I work in occupational health nowadays largely, and I work therefore with employers who have employees who may be struggling in certain aspects of the role. So it might be that I've worked with the services, I've worked with the armed forces, the fire brigade, the police, and often people who are drawn into those type of specialties have their own neurodivergency issues. In fact, that's what makes them so particularly effective in that role, where you have to be very brave or be able to take on situations where other people would balk at the thought of doing that completely. And I think for a lot of employers, understanding that in fact their employees, that their strength is their neurodiversity, but there are some downsides to that and some weaknesses which they'll need help with and understanding.
Yeah, I think it's having that holistic view to this rather than seeing neurodiversity as some form of deficit. It's recognizing that they do have gifts and they do have creativity and talent. Yep.
I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs around the world, really, you'll notice that many have the features that you might think would fit with certain patterns of neurodiversity, and yet they've been incredibly effective and very successful. Interestingly, not necessarily conventionally. So, for example, some entrepreneurs have had a super successful career. When you look at their GCSEs school life and their success at staying in a classroom setting, they've had a disaster. Some have been expelled. Some have had no qualifications. Some have been told you're useless and you'll never succeed. I mean, I think Robbie Williams is a good example of that. I think that he's got clearly quite some strong feelings about what he was told when he was at school. And clearly he's had issues, and he's been very upfront and honest about them.
And he's been one of the most talented and sensitive Hollywood A-listers.
He's been an ambassador, hasn't he? He's somebody you look to, very, very self-deprecating, very honest about what he does, very successful.
Yeah.
So a bit of a mix, really.
So at this point, I'd like our audience to learn a bit about your authentic self, if you like. And I'd like to preface the authenticity discussion by asking about maybe a challenge or like a challenge or a big difficulty that you may have undergone or learned from.
That's a great question. I mean, I've always been, from childhood, I've always wanted to create things. I used to play with Lego when I was little. I used to make intricate models out of it and then take the bits and make them again. And as an adult, I wanted to build a house of my own. And the older I got and the more expensive land became, the less likely it seemed that was going to be successful. And then finally, I live in Beverley in East Yorkshire, and I had a rare morning off, and I was fiddling about in the garage, tidying things away, when I got a knock on the garage door, and it was a chap with a camera, and he said, "Do you have a stepladder I can borrow?" And I was a little surprised and said, "Is he about to steal something from my house or something? Or is he from the local press? Is he a journalist or something?" And he said, "I'm photographing the land behind you that's for sale." And it turned out there was a plot of land owned by the gas board, which was a derelict site. In fact, it was so derelict, I didn't even realise it was really a plot. And so I lent him this set of stepladders. We stood on the top of them, looked over the top of this fence to discover this sort of wasteland of bricks and debris. And he said, "It's up for sale," and the gas board is selling it, and and of course at this point instantly I'm interested. To cut a long story short, if we go forward 3 years, my house is now built on that site.
Right.
And in terms of challenges, it was basically built on wasteland, because although there was a little housing estate around it, it was actually built on an old gas site. So there'd been a gas platform underneath it. And everybody has said when they come to look at the plot, well, it's worthless because nobody can develop that. It's contaminated, it's unbuildable on. And I love a challenge.
Okay.
Particularly if somebody says it can't be done. So I was very lucky. I had a great local architect. He helped me build it. And as we were building it, and they put the foundations down, it had to be built on almost like an oil rig platform because it was too unstable. It was bricks and rubbish and debris.
Yeah.
And as we went down, we actually hit oil.
All right.
And we hit the bottom of the oil sump. Now, they had to put metal pipes down and blast air down these things. So the first metal pipe goes down and hits the base of this sump. The next pipe goes down and blows compressed air down it. And, of course, out of the first pipe comes up this plume of filthy oil, which has been down there for many, many years. And there's this moment of comedy with literally a Beverly Hillbillies type situation where you've got this enormous plume of oil in the air. And my dreams of building a house are disappearing as I'm looking at it, thinking, this is it, the end of it, I'm going to be sued. Luckily, it all came together, and now I've got a house on there, and it's a beautiful house. And
so it sounds like it was an impossible feat, if you like, but you're able to accomplish it.
It couldn't be done.
Yeah.
And I think that's perhaps the expression that on my epitaph, they said it couldn't be done, so we did it.
Yeah.
And I think that it's lovely to be able to take on a challenge and do something which it really can't be done at all, but somehow it happens.
Yeah, and it's very inspiring. I think maybe the lesson to draw from that, you can tell us more, is tenacity and not giving up. And
I guess you're right. Yes, I think you're right. I suppose I don't necessarily recognise that in myself, but perhaps others do. I started writing a book a few years ago, and it took me 3 years to write it in total. And in the end, the characters are loosely based on myself and a few of my friends as well. And I wanted to anonymise it in case it caused affront or offence or something. But it was largely a biography in many ways.
So it's like a memoir on yourself?
Yes. Yeah. It was wrapped around a story of 3 doctors who end up in difficulty.
Right.
They end up in the GMC for various misdemeanours, which fortunately hasn't happened to me. But I have had colleagues who've had difficulties before. And it's wrapped in around a story of redemption for them all, how they end up escaping to the island of Tenerife, which has always been my go-to place when the time's difficult. But I had to anonymise it, so I'd put a different name on it. I gave myself a new author name, and I hid behind that. But actually, that is perhaps my authentic self, struggles, difficulties, and also this desire to be understood, I suppose, really, as well.
So that's something that was also inspiring, that you're an author as well, an accomplished author in a way. What?
Very kind of you to say. I think the numbers are probably less than 100 in total.
Okay.
That was a great source of pride, not because it was ever going to be successful commercially, but because I felt that I'd express myself in a creative way, which I never thought I was going to be able to do. I never saw myself as being able to write anything. Although, funny enough, I did write poetry when I was younger, which I'd scribble down somewhere and then hide it. And I found that was quite a nice way of expressing myself. And I always admired people who could write songs and create songs and put music to lyrics.
That's interesting. That's very, very helpful. And since you've talked about the authenticity side of things and your authentic self, what advice would you give to our audience on the formula for authenticity, Dr. Clayton?
That's a really good question. I think be honest, be brave. I think accept other people's views too, because it may be other people who are trying to tell you something about yourself that you may not necessarily want to hear, and may not even necessarily understand. But there are many positives about being neurodiverse, but there are difficulties too. There's a negative side to it sometimes. And I think that it's important that you understand perhaps how your own way of expressing yourself can have a negative effect on other people. It can create misunderstanding. Sometimes you can be seen as being disinterested when you're not, or distracted when in fact, or disinterested because you're distracted. And in fact, it's perhaps more that you can feel overwhelmed by the things around you and the diversions and sound and noise and television's on and that sort of thing as well. So I think it'd be to enable people to feel that they can be assessed. It's not to give them a label, it's to give them a sense of ownership and understanding and being able to accept themselves better. And
I think the message very much, I'd agree with that, the honesty and the bravery, and I think it's a balance between recognizing what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and being able to be in touch with that. And that's, I think, very well put, Dr. Clayton, in terms of the formula for authenticity. I'd like to get you thinking now, Dr. Clayton, because you've contributed quite a bit in the local politics and also to the local community. So I have my daughter, Nawal, who has autism, and she has sensory sensitivities to crying noises, which can create quite a bit of distress for her when we're traveling, especially on an enclosed plane, when there are sometimes families with small children who potentially could cry at any point of the flight. What policy proposals would you, and there's no right and wrong with this, we're just getting you to think, what policy proposals would you consider for airlines or for policymakers?
That's a great question. I mean, it's so important that, travel is such a critical part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I think tolerance of other travellers is very important too, in both directions. So, for example, if you're on an aircraft and you're sat behind or in front of the crying child, the wailing child on the aircraft, of course, the poor child has got probably having a problem with its middle ears, and it's getting terrible ear pain, which can be excruciating for a small baby. So the poor child can't help crying. And the parent trying to console that child must be in huge distress as well, the embarrassment of trying to keep the child quiet. But if you're neurodiverse and you find that the sounds are overwhelming and you become stressed out and you can't get off an aircraft. If you get off an aircraft without a parachute, not a recommendation. So I think what I'd say is, I think an understanding and awareness of the types of difficulty a person who's neurodiverse might have. That's or the hypersensitivity to certain sounds and things. I would say look at the seating arrangements. So try to make sure that a person who is on the neurodiverse spectrum and who recognises that, they may find, for example, either sat at the very back of the aircraft where there's nobody behind them. There's a bathroom and you probably have a queue of people next to you, unfortunately. But if you sat next to a window seat is relatively distracting. You've also got the grey sound of the noise from the aircraft as it's flying as well.
The grey noise.
So I think that would be quite useful. I'm also I'm aware of some in-ear devices. Now, in occupational health, we use in-ear devices mainly to stop people hearing any noise at all. So they're used to protect hearing and to take out 20, 30 decibels from the background noise. But there are devices which will more selectively take away sound, and that these aren't electronic devices. These are effectively in-ear silicon devices which you can put in there.
Right.
I understand they're called ear loops, and I only know about this because my daughter told me. She says that she wears them on aircraft, but she also wears them in restaurants when she's sat in front of a partner and she's trying desperately hard to give him her attention, not be distracted, not make him feel like she's listening to every other conversation around her, which is very difficult to ignore when you're diverse. If you're ADHD, you find you're listening to 15 conversations and not really listening to any of them because you're trying to interpret too many different inputs, if you like. So I think she uses these in restaurants, and she's found them useful on aircraft too, and on railway, on trains.
What are they called? Ear loops?
Ear loops. And effectively, the little silicon devices, they sit in the ear. You can pull them out very easily. And because people are self-conscious of these sorts of things, I understand they almost make them to bits of jewellery now. And I think Swarovski, the jewellery maker, have actually made these quite trendy items, so that in fact you don't feel self-conscious of having them. They're quite cool to have as well. And apparently, if you wear the over-ear earphones as well, which are the noise-cancelling earphones, then the effect of having the noise muffled, if you like, from one source, then with a second source over those, and then finally by having removal visual distractions as far as possible, and then the grey noise being next to the window. I think they'd be helpful. Back to your original question, because I do realise I have a terrible habit of going off a tangent.
No, don't worry. This is a conversation. So.
I think in terms of aircraft companies, I think a willingness to adapt, a willingness to try and seat people in appropriate seating, and potentially provision of over-ear noise cancelling headsets, potentially also with the in-ear devices, although they have to be single use. Possibly also to enable greater baggage allowances, because if you're flying on some of the budget airlines, You'd be lucky to get a pair of shoes in your hand baggage. So I think trying to carry a set of cancelling headphones, a good quality set of those, can be quite a challenge.
Yeah, no, these are very, very helpful suggestions, and I definitely didn't know about the ear loops. And
I didn't, Faisal.
Yeah, and the fact that the jewelry maker Swarovski has made that a trendy item. So
I
you always learn something.
Should be plugging one company, should I?
Yes.
There's other companies make them, no doubt.
Yeah, I think the particular challenge we have as a family is Nawal is very conscious not to put on ear defenders or earphones, and maybe this is her attempt to conform and be like everyone else, like
Sure.
her sister, and why would she do something that other people aren't doing? And
You want to fit in, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to feel like you're not sort of separated as being different.
Yeah.
I think feeling that you belong and that you're not the wrong person, as it were. I think it's so important for people who are neurodiverse.
Definitely. But these are very, very helpful suggestions. And I think if we can maybe get the name of the ear loop, we'll put it on the comment section below, I think, so that people can refer to that. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
So I think we're very much at the end of the conversation. But before we end it, I'd like us to, I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell the audience, any final thoughts about, how do they face adversity, any inspiring advice, keeping in mind that many of our audience would be people with neurodivergence or experience of living with individuals who have neurodivergence.
Another great question. I think I'd say, as somebody who I feel I'm likely to have ADHD myself, and I think is don't be embarrassed to seek help. Don't be embarrassed to seek professional help as well. I think having there's so many sources of information out there, and some can be contradictory, some can be unreliable. I think what I'd say is get a reliable assessment if you can do. It may not you may not end up on medication. In fact, you may not want to end up on medication for it. But I think that ability to understand yourself better, understand that you do have superpowers and things you may take for granted can be very, very creative and very important to emphasise. You may have deficits. There may be things which you struggle with, which you need a bit of help with. Your employer may need to know about those too, particularly if you want to be accepted in the workplace by your colleague, by your manager. So you're not seen as being difficult or unmanageable or inattentive or late or unreliable, and get to feel that you will fit in and you can fit in and you deserve to fit into.
Very, very wise. Thank you for that, Dr. Clayton. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and
thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
I feel very honoured to be asked. I've not been on a podcast before, and you're so easy to talk to. I found it quite therapeutic talking to myself.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for that. And I'm sure our audience would find many of the insights that you provided very, very insightful and helpful for their inspiration and facing their challenges going forward. So thank you for that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.